Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for our weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive deep into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you. From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered.
We'll bring you insights, analysis, and expert perspectives to keep you informed and in the loop so that you can stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective in South Korea's news. This is a Korea Pro podcast. Okay, let's get started. The final podcast episode of the year. It's been an interesting week in domestic politics. What happened, John?
Well, the former PPP leader, Lee Jun-seok, or Lee Jun-seok, decided to quit the party officially for once and start his own party.
Right. December 27th was the deadline that he gave President Yoon to change. What exactly was Lee asking Yoon to change?
Well, that's the question, because who the hell actually knows?
Right.
He's been telling the president to change, and he said the change needs to happen at the party, but he never really specified what needs to change.
Right. Maybe it's because it's so difficult to figure out or choose what he needs to change on, but he could have been a little bit more specific on the needs if he was giving the ultimatum and the deadline, right?
Well, that's most likely because he was giving Yoon a fake choice. He was going to do this anyway. He was going to leave the party. He was kicked out of the party. And so he was going to leave it and start his own party anyway. He just wanted to be all dramatic about it.
Right. It seemed like he already set his mind on this, going down this road, but it seemed like it was a strategy to make himself look a little bit more responsible and mature. But it sort of reminds me of how North Korea actually does that many, many times, including remember when North Korea said they will give a deadline by Christmas for U.S. to change its hostile policy, but hostile policy, it's like a definition that always changes. So this is very similar that was going on this week, but it was not Lee Jun-seok, not only Lee Jun-seok this week, that was major headline in domestic politics. What were some of the other things?
Well, at the same time, Han Dong-hoon was also chosen to lead the People Power Party. And he was chosen, I think, a couple of days before Lee Jun-seok made his announcement.
Who was Han Dong-hoon again?
Han Dong-hoon, as some of people, our listeners might know, he was the justice minister until a few days ago. A very controversial figure who is a very close confidant to the president, hated by the opposition Democratic Party, but absolutely
loved by South Korean
by the party base
and conservative supporters as well.
Right.
There are actual fan clubs.
There are actual fan clubs, people who are comparing him to Lee Jun-shin. It's a whole thing. And so that probably robbed Lee Jun-seok a lot of his thunder. He wanted to be the golden boy. He wanted to be the shining guy, but Han Dong-hoon's selection just kind of rubbed that off from him.
Right, go out with a bang sort of thing. It didn't happen because Han Dong-hoon took the thunder, stole the thunder. And also what's happening with Democratic Party lawmaker Lee Na-gyun. Lee Jun-seok there were a few hints before about them allying, but is that happening or not?
Well, we talked about Lee Na-gyun a bit last week. I said last week that I don't get why he's doing it. He has no money, no friends, and he doesn't really have a lot of supporters, at least not real parliamentary support. But yeah, he said that he was going to give his party an ultimatum, kick out the current leader, Lee Jae-myung. But of course, that's not going to happen. But even so, he's still the former prime minister, and it would look, the optics would not be great for Lee Jae-myung to pick a fight with a former party leader or prime minister. So they're trying to hash things out. But, there's a Korean saying, once you've pulled out your sword, you gotta at least stab it, right?
Yeah.
But both men have their swords drawn, but whether or not they can actually do anything about it, that's another thing remains to be seen.
Right. I guess one of the newer developments regarding the Democratic Party is that the three former prime ministers of the Democratic Party, it seems like they are creating this new partnership. But more like, let's not create a new party, but sort of try to figure out what could be a solution resolving this intra-party conflict. But more on that later. It's end of year. And this domestic political news about the new leaders potentially, is there any international implications of this for people who handle South Korea portfolio here?
It's hard to tell. Right now, a lot of the leadership changes are just focused solely on domestic politics. The April elections are coming up, and they're gearing up for that fight.
Mm.
Uh, right now, the split within the PPP is between Han Dong-hoon and Lee Jun-seok, and in the Democratic Party is between Lee Jae-myung and Lee Na-kyun. Both of their supposed rogue factions are not that powerful, or at least not as powerful as they would appear or would like others to believe that they are. But that's just about it. It's all about domestic politics and domestic angling.
Right, but I guess what might apply for international interest on this is that you remember, as many of the listeners might remember, the start of the presidential election in 2022, was it? It feels like ages ago. Was the South Korean politicians' views on feminism and a lot of social equality or just general issues on inclusivity and diversity. But Lee Jun-seok is not exactly a type of person who has a great stellar record with his remarks in this arena. What are some of the things that he said that might continue as a trend, even if he becomes a new leader of a new party?
Well, you are you've got quite the knack for understatement, saying that he doesn't have a great track record with women.
I'll
Uh,
say bad track record. I stand corrected.
yeah, the man is a misogynist.
Mm.
There, I said it. Sue me.
Yes. Well, it's also his fuel, political resource as well, because a lot of young men used to support Lee Jun-seok for his remarks.
Anti-feminist tirades, exactly.
Right, and wanting to make it into actual South Korean policies. And a lot of international headlines zoomed in on Lee Jun-seok supporting Yoon and advising Yoon on those policies. But like just looking back at this year, how did the South Korean government and Yoon actually do when it comes to these issues?
Well, I think that's probably one of the reasons why Lee Jun-seok was getting all pissy with the president, really.
Mm,
Uh, one of Yoon's campaign pledges was to finally abolish the gender ministry when he became
mm,
president,
mm.
but it's still there,
Right, and
as
also in
unpopular
Korean,
as it is.
in Korean, the name is 여성가족부, so it's women ministry. So a lot of
Yes,
people just see it as a bad connotation from some demographics like young men. Anyways,
yes.
he didn't follow through on that pledge even after the Jamboree
Even after the
kerfuffle.
Jamboree fiasco, even after the minister ran away from reporters to go into the women's bathroom, even with all of those optics, Yoon still has the ministry standing. He has not abolished it.
Mm,
And I think that he will not be able to, even if he really wanted to.
mm,
So, for whether it's fair or not, because he allied himself with Lee Jun-suk during the presidential election, he was also painted as an anti-feminist. Is
mm.
he really an anti-feminist? Maybe, maybe not, but the
I
results
don't,
speak for themselves. The ministry is still there.
right, and also I don't think he really thought it through when he made remarks related to gender issues at first,
Well,
right?
doesn't evergreen statement about him not thinking things through?
Well, listeners, if you are catching up on Korea per reading after the Christmas holidays, I have written top 10 worst moments of South Korea, and it includes the president's off-the-cuff remarks if you want to check it out.
And believe
But
it or not, I'm writing about his best moments.
I'm sorry, John. What? Well, but you chose the 10 best moments, right?
Nah.
Well, we have other end of year features lined up, so check it out. And if you're not a subscriber yet, go to koreapro.org, and there are year end subscription discounts going on. Let's take a step back from all the domestic politics. The international implications, we will see them months later on. There were a few things that was going on with some of the trade partners, including Russia. What was going on there, John?
What South Korea did a few days ago was to expand the list of its export restrictions to Russia.
Mm,
Now, what South Korea said was that some of these export products has a potential for dual use in military purposes.
mm,
And so, if I recall the numbers correctly, there were 682 additional items that would require special permission from
mm,
Seoul to export it to Russia. And so after this announcement was made, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said in an interview with Reuters that South Korea should not be surprised if Moscow retaliates. And I believe that the word that she used was symmetrical. She said that Russia's retaliation will not necessarily be symmetrical. And that was all she said. She didn't really dive into specifics.
So that's a very military rhetoric, right? Over proportionate measure. One of
Well, the
Yoon's
word that
favorite
is typically
terminology.
used in this context is reciprocity.
Mm-mm.
But they didn't go with this word. They went with the word symmetrical. Was it deliberate? I don't know. But yes, it does have a slightly more military connotation than reciprocal would have had.
Right. It's interesting, especially I guess this podcast episode's running theme is vagueness in the statements. It's also very vague, the retaliation statement.
Sure. Uh, but we have to remember, and this was an analysis that we published some weeks ago, that about South Korea's energy reliance on Russia. Despite the international sanctions, and although South Korea has not been purchasing Russian oil, South Korea has been purchasing a lot of Russian coal, Russian uranium, Russian wood pellets, and this will most likely play a significant role into any type of Russian retaliation. Unlock the full Career Pro experience by joining our community and taking advantage of our Black Friday deal and friend referral program. Stay informed, stay ahead, and never miss a beat in Korean affairs that matter. Subscribe today and transform the way you understand Korea.
All right, week ahead. Happy New Year, everyone. It will be January 1st next week. I hope you have your New Year's resolutions lined up. I didn't yet. Did you, John?
I never do that. I break it anyway. But yeah,
Well, New Year's resolution is for breaking. It's sort of like politicians' pledges. But on more seriousness, next week there is no particular diplomatic engagement that's planned in South Korea, at least not that I know of. There are a few finance ministry data that's coming out that was supposed to be this week, but because of holidays, it seems they were postponed to next week, some of them. And there are a few yearly statistics coming out of Statistics Korea related to demographics and also probably youth unemployment issues as well that you will be able to see next week. All right, I guess that's it. Happy New Year, everybody. We will see you in 2024.
Happy New Year, everyone, and 새해 복 많이 받으세요.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
We hope you enjoyed today's discussion. If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings that will give you all the most important news of the day in a succinct manner in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lee. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next week on the Career Pro Podcast.